This Saturday, the Centers for Disease Control today issued a health warning for Americans following a worldwide outbreak of a mysterious form of pneumonia, causing deaths and sending scores to the hospital.
The mystery pneumonia has infected more than 400 people and killed 9, including an American businessman in Hong Kong. There were 4 known cases in Canada, including 2 deaths in Toronto.
The question is it influenza? Or is it a new disease which we don't know? Or is it a disease which we know which has somehow mutated into a more virulent form?
Today, a surgeon is under quarantine in a German hospital.
We have no reported cases in the United States. However, we've had travelers pass through the United States who may have been exposed.
Officials at the World Health Organization tell CBS News they are alarmed for 3 reasons. They can't identify the cause of the disease and thus can't treat it. It spreads easily person to person, and respiratory distress and failure occur early in those infected.
The point here is to not panic until we have a better idea what we're dealing with. All the health authorities are on extreme alert right now.
Health officials tell CBS News they're not even sure if the illness is viral or bacterial, but they lean toward viral, which is more difficult to treat. Doctors for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are in Hanoi gathering samples from people who may be infected. Those samples are being sent to the agency's labs in Atlanta for tests.
Most of the countries affected are Asian, including China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, as well as Canada and now Germany.
The concern is that, number 1, we don't know exactly what the organism is. Number 2, we don't know what the incubation period is.
In Asia, health workers are taking precautions in treating patients.
The CDC is analyzing samples to try and determine whether the disease is a virus or bacteria, but says it does not appear to be bioterrorism. Still, U.S. officials are advising travelers to postpone non-essential trips to any of the affected countries. Gretchen Carlson, CBS News, New York.
Merry Christmas. Huples. Meow. Just want to talk about the flu that's going around at the moment. The World Health Organization is taking it very seriously, and we're doing a few things that work, but not a lot. There are a few cases in the GTA. We don't have any in our hospital, and we're keeping an eye on it. It doesn't appear to be a severe infectious pandemic at this point, so I don't think we need to overreact. But at the same time, it is concerning. The world is due for a flu outbreak that will kill quite a lot of people. So me and Kitty are just doing what we normally do at work, but being a little bit extra cautious in terms of masking and hand washing and not taking too many risks. But it's been an interesting week for the news. See, Canada is reporting that we do are, in fact, having a spike of cases. There's not real news out of the United States as yet. Apparently you guys aren't experiencing any flu outbreaks.
The killer bug is now striking the front line of defence. Doctors, nurses and healthcare workers now make up a quarter of all victims. The number of victims expected to triple within weeks. Despite government assurances it's under control, doctors are no longer willing to hide their grave fears.
If there's any further outbreak of cases in the territory, I'm afraid that the public system will not able to help.
The Doctors' Union recommending drastic moves to deal with the epidemic. They say all businesses should be shut down for a fortnight to stop the infection spreading from person to person in the workplace. Tourist numbers dropping off dramatically as paranoia grows. It's believed contamination fears have turned a cruise ship around. The World was heading to Asia, but the ship's captain brought the vessel back to Brisbane. Macquarie Bank is one that set up a special quarantine office for workers returning from Asia so that they don't infect local staff. The head of the World Bank is warning that a prolonged outbreak could ruin economies in the Asia region. Fear of how bad the problem might become is clear.
that we're not dealing with just a blip on the radar screen. But as Dr. Gerberding says, we're not really sure where it's going to go because we are truly in the middle of the evolution of an epidemic.
Latin 10 News.
As we all know, most of the clusters at the moment are in Asia, China and Vietnam and Singapore. They've probably got, from what I can tell, about a couple of thousand cases, and they've had about 4 or 5, maybe 10 deaths that are directly attributable to whatever type of virus or bacteria this current flu is. And people are still looking at exactly what the causation is, and we're trying to figure it out. As yet, there is definitely no vaccine, no treatment, other than great preventative nursing care. So I do encourage you to watch the videos on hand washing and quarantining and putting a face mask on and off properly. Those skills are not something you should learn on the job. So of course the main news was Israel overreacting and basically quarantining a couple of thousand Canadians this week who arrived on airplanes and doing some preventative screening and all the rest of it. While I think that's a good idea to some regards, I do think to actually target individual countries may be an error. I think for mass screening you should do mass screening or not do it at all. I do think anybody with symptoms, regardless of which country they come from, probably should be put into quarantine. But the thing is, what do you do with an airline? If you've travelled on a plane for 4 to 12 hours and somebody on that plane's infected with flu, you pretty much guarantee most of the passengers are carrying it on themselves and in their hair, and quite a few of them will develop flu later on. As I keep telling everybody, for about 24 hours or so before you have any symptoms, you're infecting other people.
There's nothing there. If they want to do this, it's fine with me. Let them do it. But it's not the most, there are other things they should be looking for instead.
Well, that's it for me. Hopefully there won't be too much to report next week. Just look at some pictures that are going on right now in Toronto. People are starting to get mask crazy again. We ain't seen this since 2003 when we had SARS. Anyway, remember in SHTF, tomorrow will always be worse than today, unless you're prepared. So get prepping. And I do think having a good look at your pandemic preps right now is smart. Doodles! Well, as you probably all know by now, the flu, which we still haven't figured out what it is actually in Toronto, and there's like about maybe 30 or 40 patients with flu in one of the Richmond Hill hospitals, which is kind of heavily an Asian area, and predominantly most of the patients so far are Asian. There has been human-to-human spread though within households, so we're taking this really seriously, and it's kind of freaking everybody out. The World Health Organization has put Canada on a travel ban, so they're advising people do not travel into or out of Canada, and that's going to wreck a lot of people's New Year plans. And one of the issues is that it's going to really ding the economy. It's not such a bad time of year for that, but people are kind of getting worried about it. There's about 3 ventilated cases in my hospital, and Kitty hasn't looked after them yet, so we're trying to figure out what to do. This is just a bit of a clip for showing you what Hong Kong's doing. Hong Kong's estimated to have about 4,500 cases at this point, with about 50 deaths.
Introduced compulsory temperature checks for all school children before they attend class each day. And in this high-rise city where most people live in apartment blocks, the disinfected plastic sheeting has reappeared on the security code pads and lift buttons. They're all measures which worked for Hong Kong during SARS and which the government is hoping will work now as it faces the latest flu threat.
While much of the world's attention is on Hong Kong, it is also quite heavily in Singapore and Berlin, and now of course Toronto as well. Now, one of the things that we're all doing is those of us who worked through 2003 SARS are all having kind of flashbacks, and it's not much fun. One of the things that happened is that we had to go into home quarantine and work quarantine, all that sort of a thing. So one of the things we did the other night is we grabbed ourselves some N95 masks. These are the ones that are specific to me, and these are the ones that are specific to Kitty, and we grabbed some gloves. Now, we already have quite a large amount of pandemic supplies, but it just seemed a good idea at this point to do that.
Clearly, Hong Kong people themselves are dreading any return to the dark days of SARS.
We are a crowded city. It will be terrifying if it comes here.
It could be like SARS again. If it is, I will stay away from the crowd.
If it happens, I'll wear a mask and do more work from home.
Remind each other to keep our community clean. Living with the recurring threat of avian influenza, researchers in Hong Kong warn that this part of southern China suffers the same developing world problem as Mexico. Large populations living close to the animals they raise for food. As many parts of Asia have prospered, so meat consumption has steadily risen, bringing with it the increased risk of an animal-borne virus crossing over to people, with global consequences. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
One of the main differences between this and SARS, whatever this is the number of cases that are springing up. It's vastly more than we saw with SARS. We saw 5 to 10 with SARS. Toronto, like I said, we are estimating we've got about 65 confirmed cases that show definitive symptoms of this virus, and there may be other cases out there in the community we haven't picked up on yet. It is a hub spread at the moment. It went from probably China to Singapore, then to Hong Kong, then to Berlin, and then to Toronto. So I think all the major cities of the world are probably going to face this type of a flu. The death rate is not as large as it could be at the moment, but everybody's kind of worried. Just going to show you a clip. George Soros is actually calling for the world governments to finance a Marshall-type plan to actually reflate the economy if this is actually a pandemic, which is kind of odd because it's only been really around a couple of weeks.
But looking ahead, this is bound to have a negative effect on the European and particularly on the German economy. The strength of the dollar is already precipitating a flight from emerging market currencies. We may be heading for another major financial crisis. The economic stimulus of a Marshall Plan should then kick in just at the right time.
So one of the things the hospital that Kitty works at does is the ICU. They actually have a phone service, and if people actually get contaminated or go into quarantine, they actually let everybody who works there know as well what to do. So all the hospitals seem to have well organized plans for this placing of the outbreak. And what I'll do is when I go to work this week, I'll actually video a little bit and talk about the pandemic plan that Ontario, Canada is actually about to implement. So this clip is showing one of the nurses that died in Hong Kong this week. Very, very tragic. And it just shows the amount of fear, I think, that's starting to break out. Look at who's wearing masks and who isn't wearing masks. The politicians and the business people are still trying to tell us it's going to be fine. And I don't know, it is going to be fine. So with the WHO's worldwide travel ban of flights into and out of Canada and Germany and Hong Kong and China and Singapore, as I said, the main effect at the moment is economic. And so the Canadian government actually went to the World Health Organization to plead the case for this not to be put in place. But as today, you can fly out of Canada, but pretty much most flights that aren't Canadian have been cancelled.
I can assure you of that.
So one of the things I like to do is I don't just look at the media sites like CNN and stuff like that. Most of them are data mining and harvesting from Reuters and AP. One of the things I was looking at is what people in Hong Kong are actually saying about this. I think this is really important. This is looking at it from the economic point of view, and again, if you read between the lines, what people like George Soros and this guy are doing is they're actually expecting this pandemic to be way, way, way worse than SARS was.
If the impact is short-lived and in the second quarter and it's limited to tourism, then I think the damage won't be severe. The prospect is that it becomes a global pandemic, and in that case we see a derating of Hong Kong, that people simply don't want to travel to Hong Kong, and you get a contraction not only from the tourist sector and the knock-on effects to private consumption, but investment and trade flows also suffer, and this could have a catastrophic impact on Hong Kong's GDP were this to come about. Trading activities, they've moved sensitive positions to safer destinations or locations in order that trading books not be left exposed to the potential that key staff would be quarantined. And I think that's the first round of this. Obviously, I think the entire business community is developing contingency plans about on what to do in the event that the epidemic becomes more serious.
So if that continues for extended period of time, I'm quite sure that he's right. It's going to be drastic, not only for Hong Kong, I think it's probably for some of the other places as well, because internationally, Hong Kong do business worldwide, and if anything happens to Hong Kong, it probably affect the other side as well. So I think it's becoming a rather international scene.
We've scaled back our GDP growth forecast for Asia ex-Japan by about 0.5 percentage point to just over 5%. Some of the economies that will be more impacted from this would obviously be the most tourist-dependent economies, Hong Kong, Thailand, and Malaysia.
So there you have it. That's the news this week. I wish you all a prosperous and healthy 2019, and I specifically wish myself a healthy 2019. This is looking like a severe flu outbreak, certainly probably one of the worst flu outbreaks we've had since 1968. And I think at this point, if you can get access to hand sanitizer and face masks and disposable gloves, you might want to consider it. I'd also at this point cancel any vacations I was taking. And at this point I would also consider maybe looking at ways of limiting contact with other human beings. I'm not talking about panicking, I'm not talking about bugging out to the hills, but I think this is something we should all be looking at. Bearing in mind, flu is contagious before symptoms appear. Happy New Year, everybody. Toodles. So Kitty just called me. She's about to come home from work and she thinks she may have got the flu. So I've got my mask on. Let's figure out what we're going to do with this one.
So we wound up intubating her, and some of our nurses seem to be having some symptoms, so I'm just a bit concerned. From Richmond Hill.
How's your neck? That's not good.
No. So I just don't know if I've been exposed to this flu. She was really sick, having a lot of difficulty breathing. I don't know if she'd aspirated, but she was nauseated, vomiting, and febrile, and sick. So I think we probably should try to stop spreading this in case it's around.
Okay, so put a mask on, get you in.
So, I don't know what you want to do.
Well, I think for now, if you go in the front way, and I'll stop using the front way, you just use your bedroom like you normally would. If you use the upstairs toilet, and I'll just use the downstairs one, we'll try and figure it out. We'd better probably start taking your temperature.
I don't really feel sick yet.
I know you won't. Hopefully you won't be. You probably need to figure out getting your hair cut at some point as well, eh?
Well, I'll just put it up. I just have it for now.
Alright. Something.
Okay, I'll go upstairs.
Alright, I'm not going to give you a kiss though.
No, maybe not, okay.
Do you mind shutting the door, because I don't want to touch the handle?
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hi. So Kitty's gone to bed. We've got a good setup here. With her using the front door and going straight upstairs, she has her own bathroom and she has her own washroom. One of the major problems is actually Mr. Beer. So we're going to actually barricade off the bottom of the stairs so we can't go up. Becky, of course, cannot go up the stairs, so that's a good thing. But one of the things you need to be doing if you are actually quarantining is actually making sure that any virus that's been contaminated onto the area has been removed. So the upstairs is considered to be contaminated until such time as like about 10 to 14 days has gone by and she's actually symptom free. At that point there's no virus, I'm not worried. If she gets sick, once she's recovered or not, the entire upstairs would have to be cleaned, and for that I would use full personal protective equipment, a full suit, disposable shoes, big mask, eye goggles. Having just been exposed, the chance of her actually spreading it to me is very, very remote at this point. However, I'm still concerned about that. Having lots of soap, I mean we've got like a lot of soap, and soap and water is actually great for cleaning your hands. Stuff like this works as well. It's basically foam spray. And the way it works is it foams so you can actually see it go around. Now one of the things that I will be doing in the near future is removing the ring. You should not have jewellery on your hands at all. Wristwatches as well. None of them. Okay? I already clean the outside door handle because I don't want people coming by and catching it. But I'll use something like this product, but any basic strong bleach will work. And what you do is you just take the out, and you can wear gloves for this, but you don't necessarily need to. But with this stuff, you might want to wear gloves if you're using a lot because it's antiviral. And you just clean the door handle like this. Make sure it's very, very wet all around. As soon as you finish with this sort of thing, don't scrunch it up. Get a container that's special for the product right here with a lid. Drop it in. Close it down. So obviously the car's considered to be contaminated as well. Now what Kitty's in right now is what's called work quarantine. Until she actually has the flu, though she's definitely been exposed to it, she's allowed to work. Interesting, right? But she's not allowed to go anywhere. She has to be at home or at work. So she's allowed to get gasoline in the car, but she has to wear a mask while she does that. So obviously this is going to cause a major impact. She can't go to yoga, she can't go grocery shopping, she can't even really go out for a walk unless she stays 30 feet away from people. So it's going to be a major disruption. But it's for 10 to 14 days and it's well worth it. Because if she gets sick and I get sick at the same time, then we're in real trouble. If she gets sick and I maintain not being sick, I can at least help her. Well, that's it from me. I'm going to press ahead. Just going to show you one of the news things from this week. It is now actually in the States. It's in about 26 countries, and we don't really know how many have got it in China and are dying over there. But currently, we've only had 3 deaths in Toronto, and that's pretty much guaranteed. And there's about 200, 400, maybe 300 people infected. It's really hard to tell, because a lot of people have flu right now, so it's hard to tell if it's this type or just general flu. Anyway, take it easy. That's all for me for this week. Bye.
As new cases emerge, quarantines expand, and the disease spreads to North America, the consequences are multiplying. So Cece, give us the latest tally.
Well, as of this afternoon, Gwen, we had reported about 4,600 cases worldwide, 275 deaths. About 26 different countries now have cases of this new pneumonia-like illness. In the United States, we're reporting about 41 probable cases. That's been creeping up each day. 213 others, though, that are being closely monitored here in the United States. Thankfully, no deaths here at home. But aside from sort of the health impact, the economic impacts of this are really becoming quite large and quite serious. You're seeing, especially in Asia, the impact where you once had growth forecasts of 2, 3, 4%. Now they're down around 1 or possibly even no growth. There was a Chamber of Commerce official from Toronto speaking today about now all of the cancellations. Springtime is a popular time to go up there, tourism, baseball games. He said one convention that just canceled would be a loss of $20 million to that city's economy. A number of airlines already suffering are now calling for bailouts. They've been canceling flights. So it's a very broad impact.
What about other, how we're handling this epidemic? I don't know if it's an epidemic yet or what we call it, but how is the U.S., how is the CDC equipped in handling it compared to China, which was accused of being sort of mishandling at the beginning, and the Canadians. And also when I think about it, the third world countries, and are they in real trouble?
Potentially, yes, absolutely. If you see cases get into some of those third world countries, it could be very difficult to contain spread. With respect to, say, the differences between China and the U.S., frankly, the health officials here say probably a little bit of it is luck with the United States. They really scratch their heads and can't quite figure out why we haven't seen more cases, why we haven't seen death. And they don't necessarily think that we're out of the woods by any means. And that's why every day right now you're seeing the numbers in China going up by hundreds.
See, even though people in the United States seem quite calm about this, if it comes to the United States in a bigger way, are we prepared for any kind of epidemic? Do those masks really work? I mean, what happens?
Sure, masks do work. It appears to be spread most often from droplets, say sneezing and coughing. Possibly also it survives on surfaces, and that's why it can be so contagious. There are simple things like hand washing. Believe it or not, there was a reason why our mothers told us to wash our hands. It's one of the best and simplest things you can do to protect. But the great fear here, Martha, is that if we get large numbers of cases, our hospitals are not ready to handle those. You need to isolate those patients, put them in special rooms with separate airflow. And also, frankly, the state of our quarantine laws in this country is a patchwork of 50 different laws. And there's a lot of anxiety about whether or not public health officials could really step in swiftly and isolate and quarantine large numbers.
Well, in that sense, Cece, I've been wondering if this, in a strange way, is almost the kind of dress rehearsal for what might happen if smallpox or some other bioterror weapon were used against the United States.
Sure, absolutely. And maybe that's a little bit of a silver lining to all of this right now. And certainly what you're hearing from the medical community is that because of all the anxiety over bioterrorism, they certainly were more sensitized to watching for mysterious illnesses coming in. They're better, it's called surveillance in the medical world, and have their emergency command centers and that sort of thing. So it's a drill, but they're also spotting the weaknesses.
That there is no need for hysteria or panic.
Kitty, can you tell me what it's been like the last week for your work?
No, it's crazy busy. So many people with respiratory illnesses. Flu is really, really bad. Lots of staff sick. It's been very bad.
How are you doing?
Well, I'm tired out, sick of being here.
How's work quarantine going?
Fun, lots of fun.
Yeah?
Lots of fun. Lots of mask wearing, lots of fun.
Does it remind you of SARS or is it worse?
I think it's different because I'm out in the hospital, where SARS I was just in the unit. But there's a lot of people sick, so in that sense I think maybe it's worse.
Right, well, go off and do what you do. Let me know if you need a bed. I don't have any.
Gotta go.
Bye.
Oops.
Hey everybody, here I am, middle of the night at work. Just thought I'd give you a quick update on what's going on with this pandemic. So, declared it a pandemic, and scientists all over the world are trying to figure out what exactly the virus is and if we can get a vaccine quickly enough. The death rate's not really that spectacular, at least not in North America and Europe as far as we can tell. But it is pretty much in every corner of the globe. And unlike SARS in 2003, this new pandemic in 2019 is affecting significantly more people for sure. The death rate appears to be very, very low. It's like double to 3 times the normal pandemic death rate. So yeah, we've seen a few young people get it and die in the ICU. Basically last weekend it got really hectic before I did that video update for you. And on the Tuesday afternoon we declared a provincial code orange, which is not typical in a pandemic, but they decided to do it just to give them the legal clearance. So there's been no list case surgery all week, which gave us a break in terms of beds. We've been trying to look for extra staff and stuff. In SARS in 2003 we got staffing from Alberta and paid them massive amounts of money to help out, and that's not an option because everybody's got it this time. You know, originally it was Toronto, but yeah, it's way over everywhere. So it's like a massive pandemic, but it seems to be a really, really bad seasonal flu. Mostly kind of on the lines with the Asian flu and the Hong Kong flus in the 50s and 60s. We're doing okay, me and Kitty and her parents. Parents are actually kind of put themselves in a quarantine for most of it, and generally speaking that's a good idea. So I'm just going to give you a rough update of what I've been doing in the last week. So this is just kind of my guideline thing that I've been using. It's not the full pandemic plan, but it's what we've done. We've converted about 157 beds at this point to flu beds. So anybody with flu or flu symptoms that's come in that requires hospitalization, we've used them beds, and they're pretty much full most of the time. The other beds were kind of swinging through and doing essential services, because you know what it's like. People still have heart attacks and still need chemotherapy and still need dialysis. So we're kind of treading water, and we've been using every space and bed we can think of. The emergency department and the ICUs have really took a pounding over this, and I'm not going to go in there because you have to mask and gown up, as you do in all the flu units, the 4 flu units. We've set up, well, 5 flu units. We set one up this morning. Anyway, sorry. So yeah, a large part of what I'm doing is I'm redeploying staff, trying to encourage staff, trying to be helpful with staff. People got a lot of questions. We have actually distributed Tamiflu to quite a few people, and I'll talk about that either this week or next week. And things are going okay. It's significantly frightening, I think, for the population out there, but it's not as scary as SARS. It really just is bad flu, and a lot of people have had it and got over it or getting over it, so people aren't as scared as maybe perhaps they should be. Worldwide, when you tot up the death rate, we've tripled SARS at this point. But bearing in mind, SARS didn't kill that many people globally. It killed, you know, quite a few in a few places, Toronto being one of them. So yeah, so we're just plugging on. We're hoping to see the end of this flu outbreak soon, and that would be great. We're not really seeing any dropping in numbers yet. What happened here was that we had like 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 cases over the week, and there was a huge to-do about Toronto having this infection, blah, blah. And then we kind of just spiraled up. We had like 50, 60, 80 people in emerge just within a 24-hour period. And we've been consistently seeing 50 to 60 people in emerge just with the flu since then. We've separated the emergent into 2 halves, so anybody is triaged by gowned professionals, and then they go into the flu area, and 90% of them were sent home. We can't do anything for them, and we don't have the space. So we're giving a lot of information out there to families and friends and patients, trying to, you know, basically self-care, right? Self-care. Hydrate, rest, take it easy, call 911 if you get very ill. Kitty's quarantining at home did not go well, but otherwise we're doing okay. We haven't been out, we haven't been shopping or movies or going for a walk actually where people are around for some time. We don't plan to till this is over. And just going to keep plugging away at work. It's funny because we both said after 2003, Kitty and myself, that if we ever had to face another pandemic, we were just going to quit. And we were pretty definitive about that. When it came to it, we didn't. We're out there working because somebody has to, and yeah, hopefully it wasn't fatal. I don't think so. I've really not had any sign of symptoms. I've got like a grumbling throat and I don't feel that well, but to be honest with you, I think it's overwork. The other things I'm doing is I'm using the stairs quite a bit. When I don't, I use back service elevators like this because very few people use them. Not a good place to be in a pandemic. The problems we've had this week is actually getting more supplies, and we've managed to get enough supplies, so we are actually encouraging people not to use quite so many, but actually dealing with the waste is a major issue right now. So this is our central stores. It gets redone very often. This is where the pandemic supplies are. Yeah, we use them all quite quickly. So like I said, we're trying to hoard what we've got. But we do have a fair amount of gloves and masks and gowns flowing around. So hopefully we will be okay. It remains to be seen. We are encouraging minimal use of stuff, but one of the main things from SARS was if you reuse gowns and masks and gloves, you're going to get infected and you're going to get sick. So we are volume using a vast quantity of material, and of course pretty much every rich country in the world and the poor country in the world are doing the same thing right now. So actually getting supplies is going to be a major key factor if this keeps going. However, most people are thinking that we're going to pass the peak probably in the next 2 or 3 days, which would be a good thing because we're all getting really tired. So this is just used linen, and this comes from the flu areas, so it's been specifically bagged and tagged for that, so we know. And this is just from what we designate the non-flu flaws. So again, we can tell at a glance what we're dealing with. We deal with all of them as potentially infected, but obviously the ones that we know are infected are much more of a biohazard than the others. One of the things we do is, like, when we're going to go into the flu areas, we actually gown up and mask up before we go, and then we use our washroom to get rid of them. Because, to be honest with you, flu areas, I don't trust them. I mean, we reduced visiting, but they haven't stopped it entirely in this hospital, which I think is a mistake. And I don't really trust the hygiene of visitors and actually staff in the high areas of flu. So I'd rather have my own stuff and deal with it myself calmly in my own washroom. And that's what we've been doing. So these are our standard leaflets we're handing out to people, how to look after themselves at home. Fairly basic information. I'll probably go through this at some point, and when and how you should actually summon medical help. It's kind of funny. This is all the people who are actually on the pandemic operating committee that we've got going right now, and at night they're all me. I have a few people at home I can call, but basically day to day, night to night, on weekends and nights, it's me or my co-workers, and we're really getting kind of tired. We've got 2 co-workers down sick, so we've all been doing like whack loads of overtime, which is not a good idea in a pandemic. But we're all trying just to eat, sleep, focus, and trying to grab whatever rest and fun we can have at work while this is going on. That's it from nights. Another service elevator. Going back up to the office again, trying to jiggle beds, trying to jiggle staff, trying to jiggle supplies. It's working. Hopefully it won't be for much longer. Latest.
The Silent Invader, an up-to-the-minute report on Asian influenza. Throughout history, mankind has been forced to wage many battles in order to protect his family or nation against misfortune, disaster, or even possible extinction. Now, sometimes these wars have been, well, they've been catastrophic. There was the catastrophe of 1918, when an influenza epidemic swept through our own nation, as well as the entire world. Unlike the battles of nation against nation, or humanity against the forces of nature, when man has often had an opportunity to prepare himself, the battles against disease throughout the centuries have often found man in the unfortunate position of having to combat this enemy only after it had infiltrated his community and infected much of the population.
At that time, as you may recall, in that whole period, we had about 20 million cases in the United States and about 850,000 deaths. But I would like to add that conditions are quite different now than they were then. In the first place, we have a mild strain of influenza, not a virulent strain. In the second place, we have the antibiotics to combat any complications that might arise, which we did not have in 1918.
Because it means only a short 6 weeks from the time the first cases were reported in China, they occurred in the United States. This indicates the great rapidity with which influenza and influenza-like diseases can spread over the world.
So that a person who is immune to the older strains is probably not immune to this new strain. And thus, the vaccines, which have been developed in the recent years by Drs. Francis Salk and others, have probably no effect on this invader from Asia.
We believe that the size and severity of the epidemics can be minimized in this country. Thus, it is the opinion of experts that there is no need for hysteria or panic.
It's a new virus. It's a new pathogen. We don't even know for sure which virus it is.
Well, this pandemic's killing me. I really need some sleep.
Yeah, it's very bad at work, really. There's There's just so much happening with the trying to separate the infected from the non-infected, and there's been a lot of death. People are having to wait for their list case surgeries because they're canceling them all. So staff are getting sick. So people aren't coming into work. So we're having to do extra shifts. It's running through supplies. It's not very fun. And then you come home and you don't. Anytime you have an ache or a pain, you think maybe you're getting the flu again. So it's not very nice.
And the quarantine of you felt miserably, so much for all my prepper plans.
Yes, I couldn't stand any longer with your cooking, I'm afraid. I'm used to a lot of variety, and 3 days of toast and beans, thank you, Huples, just wasn't cutting it.
Well, at least we have plenty of food. Plenty of people right now don't have much variety with the state all the shops are in.
Yes, and you needed my cooking. So, getting over my beans, I've decided to make some experimental stuff with stuff we have around home. So I made this, it's chickpea flour and water, and it makes a tofu with some spices and stuff. And I'm going to brown it, mix it with some veggies, some rice noodles, and a peanut sauce with coconut milk and sriracha and spices, a little bit of cilantro. Do them up in the pan.
Can I have a taste?
Of what?
Chickpea.
Yeah. Interesting. It's the first time I've made it.
Good.
I'm just coating it with a bit of cornstarch. Hopefully that'll make it fry up nice and crispy. Yumbly yumbly. Cooking it in some oil. And we'll see how it goes. So to go along with that, I thought I would try making some bread because there's not a lot of fresh stuff in the shops and I shouldn't go out to them anyway. And luckily, Huples had a cast iron pot, which this recipe says works better with, and I whipped up some sweet potato buns. Never tried this recipe either. It smells really good. Nothing like that yeasty smell, is there? Anyway, I'm going to cook those up. We're going to have them with our stir fry.
Why is it in here?
Because this is our baseboard heater. Well, it's not a baseboard heater. We have a boiler system, so it's warm. So it's very, very cold out, and this lets it rise better.
Awesome. Can I have one of them now?
No, because they're not cooked yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Toronto is under attack by a mysterious new disease.
It's very hard to stop. It's like a brush fire that's throwing off sparks.
A virus out of control. A city under virtual quarantine. China already in the grip of the terror. Thousands sick, many dead.
Doctors in this country and others around the world are rushing to identify a deadly mystery illness.
There's a new outbreak. The control measures don't seem to be working.
There's no vaccine to prevent it, and researchers around the world say no cure is likely anytime soon.
It lands in Toronto. Its first Canadian victim, a woman who died within days of returning to Toronto from Hong Kong. The chain of infection had begun.
We don't even know for sure which virus it is. We don't understand what it does to people.
Day by day, the cases mounted.
The Ontario total of deaths for patients from SARS is now 9.
Nurses, doctors, paramedics start gowning and gloving up.
Well, that's it for me.
That's it for me, except for dinner. We have a peanut sauce with Thai noodles and veggies and peanuts and stuff. And then just some buns. Hopefully they're okay. And some wine.
And what wine do we have tonight?
Chip Chip. Chip Chip rocks. A Shiraz.
Chip Chip rocks. Where's that from?
Bon appetit. I think it's Australian. Yes.
So that was a terrible week at work and around the globe with this flu virus thing. They still haven't identified it. There's estimated about 30,000 have now died in Canada and near 100,000, 200,000 infected, but nobody really knows. We've been going flat out at work. We actually called a freezer truck in on Thursday to store bodies because our morgue capacity was completely overloaded. So far we're doing well. There's been 4 or 5 people that Kitty and I work with that are off sick. Most of the dead to this point, to be honest with you, are in the elderly and the somewhat decrepit range. The younger ones seem to have diabetes, usually diabetes type 2. So it's bad, there's no doubt about it. What's happening around the world is everybody's trying to figure out what to do. The government, the federal government and the provincial governments actually announced the day before yesterday they were closing all cinemas, all sports events and all bars, and severely, quote, restricting travel by voluntary means. So basically they shut everything down, which was kind of pointless because nobody was going out anyway. People were pretty scared, but it was showing signs of slowing up towards the end of last week, which is why I was so positive. But this week, it's kind of trickling along. Like I say, we're getting 50 to 100 cases coming in a day, and about 20 of them need hospitalization. About 1 or 2 of them are very, very sick. And we're getting on average about 1 death, 2 to 3 deaths a day in the ICU. We're completely overwhelmed. We haven't done any list case surgery for now 3 weeks. And I know that hemodialysis and the oncology programs are having a real hard time dealing with this. But it is what it is. And you can see some TV stuff that they did from one of the big infection zones that we've got set up, the secondary infection emerge that we set up in the old outpatients clinic. I mean, we're not doing outpatients, right? So we put emerge over there, but it's been staffed by a lot of retired and old, and in a lot of cases untrained people. We're just taking whoever we can, and we're just basically giving them a crash course in what to do. With the big outbreak in the Chicago metropolitan area, they had some housing estate. They had a really huge outbreak, which pretty much everybody caught it, and at least 5% of them have actually died. It almost overwhelmed Chicago's healthcare response. And this is just the CDC talking about it. So they think it's jumped from respiratory and it's now definitely stool and possibly contaminated environment spread, which makes it a lot more risky.
There have been reports of identifying the virus in stool specimens, and presumably they're examining the environment in the apartment building where the people were infected. Finding virus in the stool or in an environmental object and attributing that as the cause of exposure are 2 very different things. And so what needs to happen is a great deal of epidemiologic work to determine whether or not it's true, and related. And that work is ongoing, and we look forward to receiving that information and learning more about it.
This is from the WHO conference yesterday in Geneva. It's well worth watching this one. It's kind of interesting what they're saying and also what they're not saying.
Nothing is 100%, so there's still, even there is some way to go until we can say that the epidemic is fully controlled. And we were expecting cases to be found elsewhere due to the transport of people and traveling.
So the World Health Organization basically said that the infection was on the way out last week. As we all know, it came roaring back. So I think it's interesting the way this guy has just said basically whatever. Listen to what the next guy says.
To be able to draw any conclusions about the increased efficacy or in the other direction of the addition of traditional Chinese medicine.
So it could come back. Well, it hasn't really gone away, and I think that's what's rattling people. And it's really scary to see how many people are in public gatherings like that not wearing masks. There's no way I'd be outside right now, and if I had to be, I'd be wearing a mask.
Shared it again with the minister, and we also shared it with the vice premier, some of the concern that there are many rumors and there are no answers.
The information out of China is very hard because there's not really good relations right now between China, America and Canada. But it does appear that they have had a lot of deaths.
Prevention is by far the most important thing to control the disease, because treatment, it's still in a very experimental stage, and treatment could be very difficult and painful. Even our patients who are now discharged from the hospital and recovered from the illness, I can see that they still have muscle weakness, they still have shortness of breath, so they are not fully recovered even after 1 month.
Pictures out of China do suggest there's very few people on the streets. All week it's been practically every day there's been something new with this infection, and they still have not identified it, which really kind of is worrisome. Now apparently the US, which had got away very lightly at the beginning, is really developing a lot of cases, and they're now thinking that canine infection from dogs is actually spreading to humans, which is causing a lot of dogs to be abandoned, which is just awful.
Thousands of dogs across the US Midwest have been infected with a new strain of dog flu originating in Asia. Once infected, dogs develop symptoms including a persistent cough, runny nose and fever. The virus can be transmitted from dogs to humans. Thousands of dogs in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana and Ohio have now been infected by the virus. It is estimated that less than 10% of affected dogs die from the illness. 6 dogs have died out of the 1,137 cases reported so far in the Chicago area.
There you have it. Kitty's still in work quarantine, and so am I now, because I've been exposed as well. So I actually made a bold move and had my hair cut before, and when I work tomorrow night I'll be having a good shave so the mask fits. Stay cheerful, stick to the advice you're getting, wash your hands, wear a mask if in the public, try and avoid public spaces, hydrate, bed rest, avoid hospitals. For sure, I think as preppers, with having a lot of tin food and toilet roll on hand, certainly we were ahead of the game in that regards. Anyway, I'll see y'all next week. This flu has now been roaring along for about 1.5 to 2 weeks. It should start dropping over the next week. Well, what a week this has been. It's chaos out there, absolute chaos. It's chaos at the hospital, everybody's terrified. The normal flu deaths in Canada is about 3,500. So far this flu season we've had approximately 15 to 25,000 deaths. Now it is mostly the elderly, and it is also people who seem to have diabetes type 2. But we've had a significant spike in the last week of young people, people in the age group beneath the age of 30, and that's really starting to freak people out. However, there is some good news. They have identified the virus. So it appears to be a variant of the Westbourne virus. The Westbourne virus has been around for quite a few decades. It's quite deadly to animals. It's never really infected humans before in any way like this. What it does appear to have done, it appears to have transmutated probably with the H1N5 virus, and they appear to have actually fused, or they picked up DNA or RNA from each other. Nobody really knows. What we are trying to do right now is everybody across the world is trying to actually figure out an antivirus, a flu jab, and I'm pretty sure that even the anti-vaxxers, once this virus is identified and properly identified and we have an anti-vaccine for it, I'm pretty sure they're going to line up for it. So the Westbourne virus was first found in 1955 in South Africa, and it's been an African disease, mostly affecting sheep. And what's happened was somehow or other it's managed to get into China and into their pig and poultry. And it's been spreading by direct contact to people, and people have now developed the capacity to pass it via droplets, and also probably by sweat and saliva and probably feces. So pretty much it's extremely infectious and it's traveling everywhere. So when you take it off, you should have goggles on. I've got glasses on right now, but if you're in contaminated areas, you need goggles. First thing you do is wash your hands. Hold the glasses and remove them. Put them in mild bleach. They're highly infectious. This is highly contaminated. Get the bottom strap, put it to there. Get the top strap and hold them together. Very gently, holding your breath. And drop that into a container. Still holding your breath. Wash your hands. Move away from the contaminated area and then breathe. I hope that helped. If you have any masks, like I say, the worldwide shortage, people using cloth masks. To be frank with you, bandanas, if you use a bandana, maybe consider 2 bandanas and maybe get the form-fitting ones to the face. If you're going to use bandanas, use 2 of them. When you take them off, use the same precautions with this. Rewash them in a normal washing machine by themselves, and any of the clothing that might be contaminated, and do it on the hottest wash possible. And if you're smart, do it again, and then dry them in the dishwasher or whatever's working. Of course, this all means you have to have electricity, and there's been some talk that there might be power cuts. There is a lot of work being done trying to get the vaccine, but it's going to be weeks, maybe months away. And the big fear right now is cross-contamination, that it's actually going to get more virulent than it is. It's not that bad, judging by how many people have it at work, if you're wearing masks and taking sensible precautions. If you're actually in the room with people for maybe a few minutes, it seems to be contaminated. Now, I'm assuming all surfaces are also contaminated, like that means all shopping carts, right? All handles of gas pumps, all tins that you buy. I would assume everything's contaminated. Don't touch them unless you're wearing gloves and dispose of the gloves. Or get yourself some rubber gloves, and a lot of them, and then drop them into bleach and reuse them. Anyway, so the major news, of course, was the stock market collapse. The Dow's now down to about 11,000 from 25,000. You know, about a 60-65% drop over a week. That's kind of the big news, so you might want to watch this.
It lost a quarter of its value in just 1 week.
There will be some very good buying out there. I think people who panic will be probably be making those bargains available to the canny investor.
And spare a thought for Bill Gates. The Wall Street collapse cost the world's richest man a mere $1.8 billion this week alone. Eddie Meyer, 10 News.
Yeah, I guess there are some bargains to be made. I would trade electronically. Now, the other thing is, of course, with the death rates that we're experiencing, this is not the end of the world. Now, I know a lot of preppers are putting videos out there saying, woo, woo, civilization's going to fall. It ain't going to fall, not with this type of death rate. It's significant, right? But it's not going to do anything in the long term. Now, possibly, maybe scoop up some shares, but I'd wait a little bit. I mean, obviously, on paper, Dow Jones is down 70%, and yesterday it fell another 7%. Keep an eye on that, but to be honest with you, how much food and water you have in your house, I think, is more important to me right now than how much my stock portfolio is worth.
The closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, the main index down over 7%.
It is definitely a very, very difficult time, and it's not going to get better quickly.
The American people can remain confident in the soundness and the resilience of our financial system.
Shock and panic evident on the faces of those on the trading floor. Just hours earlier, they'd watched open-mouthed as members of the House of Representatives voted down the $700 billion rescue plan.
You know, I own a business, and I sat in my business yesterday and nobody came in. So I'm worried. I am worried. I think it's necessary. Nobody wants it to happen, but it's gotten to this point, it's got to be done.
So yeah, economic concerns dominate the news, of course, and also with false reassurance about how to protect yourself from flu. But I would actually say that the best thing that lady could do is actually get some masks and wear them and stop going around in public. I mean, everybody's now at a social distance, which seems to be 6 foot. Nobody's really getting closer than that, and that's going to help. But I still would wear a mask in public.
It's described as nothing short of breathtaking, a points drop never before seen on the US markets. This closing bell might as well have been an alarm, so savage was the selling. In percentage terms, it had less impact than the crash of '87, but it still left traders and investors shell-shocked.
Yeah, so while the world's focusing on the 70% reduction in stocks in the United States and pretty much everywhere else, what I'm focusing on is the race to get the vaccine up and running. Now we know it's the Westbourne virus variant. That's going to help a lot, and it should see this flu vaccine be available in, like I say, weeks to months. Everybody's going to race around on it. But this is some stuff I've been picking up from the web and also from work, so the news isn't actually great. So watch this.
The flu. To most of us, a yearly ritual of misery. Nothing more. But now there's a flu out there unlike anything the modern world has ever seen.
The track record of this virus is just terrible.
It's a disease that could kill the young and healthy in astounding numbers.
We are not talking hundreds of thousands of people, we're talking millions, many millions.
It's a virus potentially as terrifying as the most deadly plagues known to man. And it's just an evolutionary tick away from becoming highly contagious. Now, a fellowship of the world's leading scientists are in a race to understand the virus and make plans to prevent it from spreading.
Pandemic influenza will be one of the single greatest tests of our human system.
The moment is pretty clear. This is like a really bad Asian flu from the 1960s and 50s. We're looking probably projected at 3 to 4 million people dying from this over the next week or two, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. There's almost 8 billion people on the world. Try and get a sense of proportion. Like I say, a lot of the YouTube sites out there, it's like unbelievable. The hysteria and paranoia they're pumping into people and not giving people the straight message. Remember, wash your hands, avoid contact with people, use an N95 mask or something similar wherever you can, and make sure that surface contact, clear it. Get bleach, get a lot of bleach and use it. Use strong bleach, there's loads of recipes online. Consider everything to be contaminated and everyone to be contaminated until this is over. And be able to stay in your house for weeks to months. If you haven't got supplies in yet, go and get them. But wear a mask, do it on a quiet day of the week and be very, very careful. And there is a lot of reported food shortages, but we should be seeing the end of this in the next week or two. I keep saying that every week, but I'm hopeful.
If this virus does get away, I wouldn't paint a very pretty picture of what's going to happen.
Now go inside the race to understand the virus from the front lines in Asia to top secret labs around the world. Is it a false alarm or the birth of the superflu? In hot zone labs around the world, as they race to keep up with a deadly new microbe that is always one step ahead of them. They've been tracking its genetic mutations as it moves closer and closer to becoming highly contagious. If it does, it could trigger a global pandemic more deadly than the world has ever witnessed before.
Now what we're seeing at work is like a variable response. The vast majority of people are sick, but they're getting over it. A tiny percentage, maybe 3, 4, 5%, are not getting over it. They're getting severe respiratory infections, they're getting sepsis. It's the cytokinase cycle just going crazy with them. And they're getting a bit of a DIC, a disseminated intravascular coagulation, and they hemorrhage to death. So because of workload and everything at work, what we're doing is once people start to go into the cytokinase spiral and start to need a large amount of blood pressure medication, we're actually taking them off the ventilators and letting them die in a separate part of the ICU. We have no choice with this, but what we've seen is hemorrhage, massive hemorrhage, DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation. It's not survivable anyway, and there's nothing we have and nothing we've tried that's done anything. So because of the sheer volume, like I say, when we were last week seeing 3 to 5 patients a day that really needed high-level ICU care, we're seeing about 10 to 15 to 25 some days right now. So we are triaging. We're triaging people who have the chance to survive. And right now, one of the issues is diabetes type 2. We are not aggressively treating people with that who have severe symptoms.
It's a little bit like Ebola. It causes hemorrhaging, neurological disease, leaking from all of the vessels, and generalized damage. If we inoculate a chicken with this virus this afternoon, tomorrow that chicken will be dead.
Again, our immediate thought was, boy, has this been spreading and we haven't detected it? What's going on?
The lack of foresight is frustrating.
We have no problem whatsoever spending billions of dollars to protect our strategic, national or regional interests. No problem. Yes, when someone says, let's put together the capacity to rapidly produce an effective vaccine and ensure that we can produce a dose of that vaccine for every single individual on the planet, we seem to be caught in the headlights.
Yeah, healthcare cost containment, that's been a big thing over the last few years and pretty much everywhere. Most places have national health services, which is really helpful. America's having a lot of trouble because of tracking people across state lines. And the fact that the different states have different levels of quarantine in place for people who are symptomatic. I think, I'm fairly sure the White House is going to act on this. I think they're going to impose federal mandated orders across the states. I think they need to, because you can't have a variable response to this sort of thing. The airports still remain pretty much shut down across the world. The countries that do have them open are trying to tell everybody, don't worry about it, it's fine. But the countries that really have them open are the tourist countries, and they're trying to keep their tourist trade alive. And frankly, the only people that are using airports are people who are trying to flee and get back to where they perceive they can be safer.
Major airports have medical personnel on standby and quarantine centers ready to be activated. Most industrialized countries now have plans that identify who is responsible for hospitals functioning, closing public places, and shutting down borders. Many countries are also stockpiling large supplies of antiviral drugs. And now a potentially effective vaccine is on the horizon.
So we're still not getting much news out of China. Thailand and Vietnam and Singapore are definitely hotbeds of this, and a lot of the world's attention from science is there, trying to figure out exactly the type of virus and its response and what's mutated in the Westbourne virus. And I think they're trying to tell us that this could be really, really bad.
It will quickly spread worldwide, and then people in my hometown in the western part of North Carolina will share the same risk as the person here in Thailand.
If this virus starts spreading at the rate that flu usually spreads, the consequences are almost unimaginable.
An army of cells and chemicals called cytokines sent out to attack the virus could instead cause deadly inflammation.
And we get what we call a cytokine storm, and which can be extremely toxic, and we essentially kill ourselves.
If we're dealing with the pandemic today, this would be a nerve center for information management and monitoring and everything else. But to be quite frank with you, we will be monitoring a disaster without being able to do much about it.
And that's a take-home message from me. If this does spread beyond the spread we're seeing, and the super flu, as we're calling it at work, I think that's going to become known. The death toll in 1918 was about 20 to 30 million. If you increase the population size and do the same thing, we're looking at about 120 million people dying. We're looking at, 5 to 8 million people dying in the United States alone. The warning signs here, that's probably definite over the next few weeks. Probably definite. We're looking at death rates that we haven't seen since 1918. This is going to affect every avenue of society, every branch of society. Healthcare cannot cope with this level with the money that we've been given and the personnel we have and how we function. It's going to be every person, every family for themselves for a few weeks. But society is not going to fall from this. So please, don't be shooting people who come close to your house. Stop them from coming in. But don't watch those crazy videos people are putting out there. But they haven't even got the first clue about what actually is happening. So don't panic. Be smart. Be safe. Lock yourselves in your houses if you can for the next few weeks. I think it's that dire. I think it's that necessary. Anyway, I hope me and Kitty are here next week to see y'all. I'm hoping finally next week we can say the numbers are dropping. But right now, the numbers are getting worse. Stocks are tucker pounding. Society is stumbling, but it's not going to stop with the death rates that we have. So don't think that it is, and don't do crazy, insane things. Be safe out there, everybody.
Well, hi, Huples. This is Pepper Potpourri, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing your snippets of how the pandemic is affecting you in Toronto. And my thoughts are with you, blessings with you. I know it's got to be a really rough time to be in the medical industry. And what hit you first is now coming down to hitting us in Michigan. Let me take this off a minute. Oh, do you like my fashion statement? Yes, it's now becoming a thing to decorate your masks. You're seeing masks everywhere. I mean, it's like you're in Japan. Everybody is wearing masks, and one of the things I've noticed here, it's hitting the hospitals. We are not at danger level yet, but I'm afraid we soon may be. But what I'm thinking about is how it's really changing the economy. No one, of course, goes to a movie theater or even out to a restaurant, or they're really, Amazon is the way people shop, right? And for grocery shopping, you know, our local grocers had started that where you can order what you want online and then they will deliver it for you. And that is the way many, many people are getting their groceries. And they prepay for it, they knock when they deliver it, they just leave the box outside. You don't even have to have any contact with that person. And that industry, I'm sure, is booming. And the same thing for getting prescriptions. A lot of delivery for prescriptions rather than going into a pharmacy. So people are realizing that to keep contact away from other people and stay out of crowds is probably the best precaution they can do for this pandemic. And I know at work we're going to be going to the 6-hour type schedule, and that says you work 6 hours and then the next shift comes in 6 hours. So it's only one person in a room at a time. So hopefully that will cut down any spreading. And of course we have hand sanitizer all over the place and masks, and really tell our employees to be vigilant. And some of us can work more from home, so we are doing that. But let me tell you, if it wasn't for the internet and YouTube and Netflix, you go bananas, because that's where my social contact is mainly coming through. You know, might be some FaceTime on the phone, or it's watching videos like yours, Huples. So let's hope not too many people get a pandemic and all of a sudden we don't have any internet service. Well, and I have to admit, it's affecting my own industry. I own a medical billing company, and many of our clients are surgeons, and people just aren't having elective surgeries right now. So if they aren't doing them, we aren't billing them, and we aren't taking our percentage. And you know, a lot of industries are going to be impacted that way. So I hope this pandemic isn't a long run one, because it will cause economic problems. Believe me. Anyway, stay safe and wear your mask.
Wow, thank you, Pepper Potpourri. It really touches us to know that people are thinking about us, and to be honest, I've been thinking about you guys. Pretty much everybody's still online that I know, and everybody's doing well. Just as an FYI, you're not actually supposed to draw and write on masks, but we are, and we're using our permanent markers and putting happy messages on. It doesn't really matter, because at night, we're still on 12s, we just don't have any staff for the ICU. It's just nobody wants to work in the ICU right now. We don't really have people around at night. We're on our own. There's no visitors. There's no administration. There's very few doctors coming in at night. Much like you, we're still not doing elective surgery. We're now into like the 4th week of that. I mean, we're going to get through this probably in the next week or two, and then we're going to be working really, really hard catching up with all the surgery. So there isn't really got any end in sight for us. Now the good news is that the pandemic seems to be getting better. We're not really admitting so many people anymore, and the case numbers have dropped significantly. So it appears to be self-limiting itself, though I believe they're still working on a vaccine. What else? Yeah, cool. I really like that mask, and I think it's great. We have adequate supplies. We had a period midweek where we were actually running out of gear, but we still have enough. So that was good news. And like I say, me and Kitty have got plenty at home, and we're not going out, we're not going to yoga, we're not going shopping particularly. We are using grocery delivery services as well. But I would point out to you that consider the packaging and all the surfaces contaminated. Rub them down with Virox, because you probably got Virox, or at least bleach towels, and let them dry out. There is a possibility of the virus is drying out and then going airborne after you touch packaging, so I'd be really careful of that. But yeah, people are developing stuff. Up here we don't have a pharmacy service, but pharmacy is allowing people to pick them up, and there's actually a few entrepreneurs out there using Uber who are literally going around and collecting prescriptions for people and delivering them, making quite a bit of cash from it. Being a little more on the socialist side, our governments up here have actually banned and closed all restaurants, all swimming pools, all cinemas, all movie theatres. Everything's been ordered closed, and that's having a large distress. Now, the government, the federal government, is actually using EI and has passed a mandate that people will get 60 or 70% of lost salary back due to quarantine closures. If you're actually in quarantine, like I say, we're in work quarantine because we've been exposed and exposed, they are actually guaranteeing 100% of lost wages for people like us, which is sort of good news. Now the bad news is out of about 4,500 staff, we've got about 16 to 20 staff down with this. Most of them are fine, they're just at home feeling very ill. But we do have one porter from the emergency department that's in our ICU ventilator, and he's really, really sick. Now, as I mentioned last week, we've got a low threshold to keep people on ventilators just because we don't have enough ventilators, even with the provincial pandemic stock of ventilators. But we are keeping staff going, and staff's families as and when they come in, just because we want to. So that is one of the issues. But yeah, so we peaked, I think, probably last Tuesday when I did the last video, and since then the numbers have been dropping. We've still got the emergency department in two, one for pandemic and one for non-pandemic, and we're still not doing any electives. But the numbers are dropping, and it's significant now. It's actually almost quickly dropping, down from seeing a couple of hundred cases a day with about 10 to 20 of them needing admission and about 3 to 5 of them being very, very ill. We're now down to about 20 to 25 a day. And everybody in the GTA, all the other hospitals reporting the same. So I do actually have some good news. I know the WHO's being very quiet about this, but it does look like this infection is self-limiting and is disappearing, which is absolutely excellent news, because the actual infectiousness of it is what's going to hurt a lot of people. The number of people getting sick and dying from it still seems to be about 3 to 5% of everybody who catches it, and that's obviously not great news. So I'm hopeful that by next week things have got a little bit back to normal. Having to run the double emerge thing and the quarantine floors and the non-quarantine floors is a real headache. Not being able to move staff between and having constant people coming in sick and then having to go home and all the rest of it is a real pain. And like you said, the economic fallout from this is going to be pretty considerable. It is definitely going to push the move to virtual buying and virtual shopping, I think. This might be the death knell for real shops. Malls for sure are just empty, just totally empty. Nobody wants to go to a mall. Anyway, thanks Pepper Potpourri. Keep your spirits up, and hope your business does okay, and tell the surgeons just relax. They'll be making money again soon enough. So this is just some news clips from what's going on in Toronto. Like Pepper Potpourri says, in Michigan pretty much everybody's wearing masks, though a lot of people are having to use cloth and make up their own masks, and I think there's a lot of reusing of masks, and people have been dying, but not in huge numbers. So I managed to find some news stories for you guys to look at as well. And this is some pictures of me at work doing my full superbug gowning up, and also Kitty having some fun. She's the clean and the dirty nurse, so the one who's going into the ICU rooms with the superbug patients is the dirty nurse, but we're actually, as far as we can, having at least one clean nurse outside to help them gown and make sure they don't make any mistakes. But we've had to spread the clean nurse between 4 or 5 people. It's getting really hard to staff. And this is just a picture of me doing some research. They actually wanted to come and do some brainwave research on us to see if there was any difference between brainwave patterns in people who were possibly infected without symptoms and those people who weren't infected. So I said, yeah, sure. So I walked around like this for about 6 hours at work.
Panic immediately, concerned about my family.
So Susan works at Mount Sinai, which is downtown, and that was one of the first hospitals to get cases. And she actually got infected now. And time has gone by, and most people now are over this, so which is good news. But she tells you what it feels like to actually have something that you think could kill you.
A sudden spike in her temperature indicated the worst. She too had fallen ill with the mysterious disease.
What was going through my mind was, Where's my life insurance policy? I have to get things in order.
And finally, just to show you this, there's a lot of anger going on, especially in the healthcare professions. After SARS in 2003, Toronto should have been pretty much ready for this, and we weren't. I don't know if you can be ready for anything on this type of a scale, but basically there were things that we feel in the healthcare profession that was not in place, that should have been in place.
45% of the cases were healthcare workers. Experts say it didn't have to get so bad.
It was very frustrating to see the disarray and relatively poor level of infection control.
But Dr. William Bowie isn't sure we're ready for...
Combine staff being decimated and the reluctance of politicians to listen to scientific advice, then I'm not super optimistic.
So yeah, epidemiologists are kind of dissecting what's been going on already. But it does look like the flu has passed in terms of severity and numbers. And that's nothing but great news. So you guys be careful out there, and it's not over till it's over. Okay? Bye. These soaked in bleach and used carefully are going to be just as good as anything else you're going to buy. And of course you can get stuff like this in most auto car stores. Lots of cloths that you just dip in bleach and clean stuff with, then put in bleach and then hang on dry in the line and make sure they're sterile. You don't have to have disposable stuff. You've got to have stuff that's clean every time you use it. So you need food, you need to be able to shelter in place for a couple of weeks at least. So what we did was we went to the grocery store and we placed our stuff because we'd used pretty much everything up. So, you know, basics, soya milks, waters, lots of foods you can use, tin foods, all that stuff's a good idea. We made sure we had plenty of coffee and lots of stuff we can eat if we need to in a pinch, lots of stuff we can eat, lots of stuff the doggies can eat as well. That's about it. We should all prep for a pandemic, but we should also be very grateful that we're not dead. And it did show how fragile human technology is in this age of wonder and splendor in the internet. I want to finish with just talking about how to actually quarantine yourself and also somebody else at home, because thankfully we didn't really do that. We did it for a couple of days with Kitty, but she couldn't stand my cooking. And we broke quarantine, but she wasn't infected because she'd used good precautions at work. So this is from Australia, and it's actually a good one, and I'm just going to go through it a bit with you. This is what to do. You have a home quarantine plan in place, so 7 to 10 days isolation. So like I say, you have 2 weeks supply of food, and it's a great idea. And make sure you're not going to have tobacco and alcohol if you're addicted to that. Make sure that you're not going to have prescription meds. Make sure you can eat this stuff easily even if there's a power failure. Have latex gloves, either disposable hospital ones or a whole bunch of the rubber ones I showed you. Antiseptic wipes are a good idea, but again, just cloth with bleach are going to work just fine. Disposable tissues. The other thing I'd add to this is a whole bunch of garbage bags, strong garbage bags. Make sure you have a lot of them. Make sure you have the capacity to actually have garbage bags open in any room, and you can just drop stuff into it. You don't want to be messing around with lids on bins in this type of scenario. Obviously a few thermometers are a good idea, and paracetamol, which of course is the English Australian for Tylenol. Aspirin can have side effects and ibuprofen's not the greatest, so regular Tylenol to reduce fever is a great idea, unless the person's got liver failure anyway. Make sure you've got friends and family that will actually drop food off to you. That's actually really useful. In SARS we had that happen for about 3 months. People did our shopping for us and dropped it off at the door, and that was really helpful. Now, if somebody you know is actually sick at home, don't have anybody else visiting the house. Make sure only one person is going to look after the sick person. That should be the person who's the best caregiver. Try to avoid pregnant people getting in contact with flu viruses because there's risks for that. Keep them away, keep them isolated. Like Kitty had her own bedroom, she had her own washroom. That's really the two things you're going to really need to have. You don't want them in a common area. If they are in a common area, you want at least a meat room or away from you, a yard if you're an American, and you should be wearing a face mask. Now on face masks, the N95 are great, and if you have enough of them, I'd actually have the sick person wear the N95 before you go into the room or before they leave the room. It helps entrap the germs on their side of the N95 mask. Cooking, all of that stuff, separate, use disinfectant again. Strong bleach is going to work well for most things. and keep an eye on them, and if they get sick, nurse them up right in bed, plenty of water, and keep a healthy diet as far as you can. Now the face masks are a good one. They talk about nebulizer inhalers, and this is really important if you have an asthmatic. SARS really was spread by asthma treatments for people who had SARS who were asthmatic, but the doctors just treated them like they were, and it really made it airborne and made it very, very virulent early on. Now obviously certain types of flu, like the super flu we just had, is also going to be airborne, so you've got to be very, very careful. So read this stuff, make sure it's single use. Again, if you don't have reusable face masks, make sure you wash them very, very well. Keeping the spirits up, that's always an interesting idea. You don't want people getting bored. Kitty got really bored, and she ran out of books, and she got sick of my cooking, and she got really mad at me. So these are some ideas that you can do to deal with that. Reducing boredom while in quarantine at home. Again, try and distract yourself, figure out what you're going to do, make sure you know where you can get help if you need to. These are things you need to remember. So what I would say about quarantining at home is have a plan. The Australians are right on that. Know where the person's coming in, where the person's going out. Make sure that's a single entrance if you possibly can. My original plan in a pandemic was to actually have the infected one of us stay in the garage, and we have walkie-talkie so we could communicate, and I could leave food outside in the garden and all the rest of it. Because it's been so cold, unusually in February, March of this year, that that wasn't a possibility, so Kitty had to be in the warm house. So again, that's something else I'm going to have to think about, is that I've always thought about in terms of power outages, I would heat one room of the house, but obviously if I'm trying to quarantine myself or Kitty, that's going to be really problematic. I need to be able to heat two quite separate rooms of the house, and I hadn't really thought about that. The other one was the dogs. The dogs, you have to keep them away. Cats and dogs, snakes, keep them away from the quarantine person. They can get it on their fur, they can spread it. Obviously in the super flu, dogs were nailed for this in the United States, so we didn't really see much evidence of it up here, of human to dog to human transfer. But that did seem to be a bit of a factor in parts of the United States. And from what we can tell, that was a major issue in China. China apparently did organise a massive culling of dogs and cats during this phase, which was kind of interesting because they hadn't really shared what was going on, specifically in Shanghai. Apparently Shanghai got very, very badly infected, and their death rates probably were about 10 to 15 times a normal flu outbreak, which is giving us all some cause of concern, because it should have been fairly standard throughout everywhere given modern heating and modern nutrition, but it wasn't in Shanghai. Shanghai hit 10 to 15% of the normal death rate. Anyway, that's all from me. Pandemic 2019 is over. I'm calling it. I hope you enjoyed it. Do think about getting pandemic stocks in place. We had 2 or 3 totes of stuff, and we kind of went through most of it. So, which is why I'm re-evaluating my personal preps, although I have the ability to get quite a bit of actual hospital grade gear, and I'm certainly going to focus on getting more face masks for that. But I think I'm going to go into the more reusable, more pool shock bleach type treatments, so I'm not going to be generating vast quantities of garbage, because we did have a week or two where the garbage wasn't being picked up, and I can see in a major pandemic that's going to be a critical failure quite early on, is the fact that 1, you're going to run out of gear, and 2, you're going to run out of places to store the waste. Anyway, that's it from me. Remember, in SHTF, tomorrow will always be worse than today unless you prep. Just get prepping. Toodles. This has been a Bad Terrier production 2020. Right, Becky? Becky! Come.